California is home to 10.5 million immigrants, and between the years of 2017 and 2018, the U.S. government separated more than 5,000 children from their parents. I, unfortunately, was one of those children who lost a loved one due to harsh immigration policies, whereas my aunt, the woman who took care of me the most throughout my childhood, was abruptly taken away from me. What should have been a good day quickly turned into a catastrophe when my aunt made the mistake of answering the door to ICE officials. June 10th was a beautiful sunny day filled with excitement as it was my last day of 5th grade and I knew summer was right around the corner. With both my parents working full-time, my aunt was always the one taking and picking me up from school. On my last day of school, she dropped me off and promised me ice cream afterwards as a celebration. Once school was finally over, I ran out of class rushing to find her. Once I spotted her, I ran into her arms and she completed her promise and took me straight for ice cream and the park afterwards. Once we came back to her place, I greeted my older cousin who was there and we settled in. I clearly remember watching one of my favorite shows, Drake and Josh, on the living room couch when I heard the heavy knocks on the door that startled me. Innocently, my aunt thought nothing of it, but as soon as she opened that door and saw ICE officials, she looked at me with fear and yelled for my older cousin to get me. I'll never forget the fear she carried in her eyes when she looked at me. I could feel her soul shatter into a million pieces, and all that stuck with me that day was the crying and screaming. The woman who was always there for me was taken away from me in an instant, and we would never see each other as often. My story is one of thousands of many other stories kids can relate to when being separated from a loved one. And this is just a fraction of what undocumented families go through. The difficulties undocumented families in San Diego goes undiscussed. Therefore, I wanted to bring awareness to the bravery of those families and give a special thanks to the organizations that help those families in need, more specifically Border Angels, for their many efforts in protecting migrants and refugees all over San Diego. In San Diego, California, there have been multiple reports of families being separated. And according to Olivia Teresa Ruiz Marrujo, in her article, Undocumented Families in Times of Deportation at the San Diego-Tijuana Border, immigration policies are tough and the forceful separation between families are leading to traumatic events. Ruiz includes that in the first 6 months of 2011, non-citizen parents of at least one U.S. citizen child made up 22% of 211,167 deportations. As a city registering the third highest rate of deportations in the county, San Diego accounted for 1,350 of those deported parents. San Diego being so close to the border, we see many sites of families being separated and transported back to Tijuana, and this was the case for Miguel, a married man and a father of 2 young boys. One morning, Miguel's wife Silvia opened the door to ICE officials and they took Miguel away due to an order for his removal. While in custody, the only thing Miguel could think about was who will look after his wife and kids. He stated, "She doesn't work, she's nervous. I was the breadwinner. She'll need to get a job if she can find one. But then, who will take care of the kids?" His world came crashing down, and his desperation to return back to his family would only increase. This preoccupation is the case for many undocumented individuals, especially parents that are forced to leave their kids behind. Not only do the parents suffer in this process, but the kids as well. Seeing how ICE officials aggressively arrest and take their parents away from them can lead to a traumatic memory. In the article, Ruiz includes, in some cases, agents have had to physically separate children from their parents. Even ICE officers had to succumb to the shock separation. Kids never want to let go of their parents, and a forceful separation between them will only leave a negative impact. After, the kids are only left with loneliness, trauma, and no closure from their parents. Immigration policies are tough, and the forceful separation between families leads to traumatic memories. Even the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics had this to say towards the separation between families and how it can deeply affect children.
Pediatrician, I know what it takes to build child health. I know what it takes to disrupt child health. And I was seeing in front of me the health of these children being disrupted by the removal of the one constant, the one person in their life who could help to shelter them during times of crisis and trial. Very young children, we know that the brain does most of its development between birth and 3 years of age. And so a day of separation there is like a week to a month of separation for those of us who are older. So the worst things happen to the youngest children. Most developmental delay happens in that age group.
It's unfortunate to see that this country, despite all the evidence regarding the effects of how separation affects a child's development, still allows for the separation of families to continue like it's nothing. Historically and presently, there have been multiple efforts contributing to the downfall of undocumented Mexican workers living in San Diego, and in Jimmy Patiño's book Raza Sí, Migra No, Chicano Movement Struggles for Immigrant Rights in San Diego, he claims that, despite it all, they still continue working the jobs no one else wants due to providing for their families and pushing themselves forward in this country. In Patiño's book, he tells the story of San Diego's first Congress of Spanish-speaking people, which took place in 1939. The Congress' main focus was labor and equity, and here, Luisa Morena, a labor activist in Los Angeles and San Diego, had the chance to bring together Mexican and Mexican Americans to tell their horrific stories and incidents faced while working. These stories included how a man named Humberto Lozano worked in a factory and got his face burned off by chemicals, and how Ambroso Escudero lost 3 of his fingers working as a machinist. They weren't provided for by their work industry due to their immigration status, and many didn't care to listen to their stories. In the course of all this, KKK affiliates only harassed and called them names including illegal aliens. Luisa Morena was infuriated with that term and claimed, "These people are not aliens. They have contributed their endurance, sacrifices, youth, and labor to the Southwest. They have paid more taxes than all the stockholders in California's industrialized agriculture." Many Mexican and Mexican Americans were harassed and even beaten to death by KKK members for speaking up and for working in the U.S. KKK affiliates viewed Mexican and Mexican Americans as peasants not contributing anything good to this country, and white capitalists terrorized innocent workers of color. All efforts were pushed to break down the work unionization of Mexicans and Mexican Americans, but nothing worked, and they only pushed harder. The article then goes in depth with statistics and points out that in San Diego, 1 out of 3 workers are immigrants, and each of them highly contribute to the local state, taxpayers, and consumers. It follows up and states, immigrants typically contribute more through income, payroll, and other taxes to support public programs like Medicare, even though many immigrants who contribute to these programs will never have the opportunity to benefit from them. Undocumented individuals can live many years in the U.S. and abide by all the rules, yet they won't be able to benefit from any programs or gain the right to become a citizen. It is really unfortunate to see such hardworking people not get what they deserve. Many families, such as the one I'm about to show, spiral in questions, wondering why can't the U.S. give them opportunities and accept them? All they do is work for a better future and put their all into this country, but in return, they get nothing. No benefits, no help, no support. The family of 3 is now separated due to the mother being deported back to Tijuana after many years living in the U.S., and even after she constructed a life, a business, and a family here, the U.S. still deported her back into a country she hasn't been in for many years.
O sea, what are we doing that's wrong? What are we doing that's wrong? Es como un dolor encima de otro, encima de otro, encima de otro, porque toda nuestra vida hemos querido sido ser parte de los Estados Unidos y sentimos como que ahora nos dan la espalda después de tantos años de trabajo, de sacrificar, de mandar a nuestros hermanos a la militar y todo eso.
Lo que pasa, Carla, es que Estados Unidos es un país que nos abrió las puertas, yo lo digo por mí, porque tuve oportunidad de tener mi negocio, de tener casa, de darles a ustedes un nivel de educación diferente o un nivel de educación más alto.
Pero los que no son criminales, como tú,
lo saquen del país.
Ya
Y
sé.
eso es una injusticia.
Like the youngest daughter said, it is unjust that after doing all the right things and putting in all the right efforts, it is bizarre that the US would deport her or someone like her. Now they visit their mother whenever they get the chance to, and saying goodbye is always the hardest part. It is hard to tell whether the US will ever change its ways and policies towards undocumented families, but that's why I appreciate and support organizations such as Border Angels that put their time and effort into helping families in these types of situations. Border Angels' only goal is to promote a culture of love through advocacy and education by engaging in direct action to defend the rights of migrants and refugees. They believe in social justice, and their main focus is on helping migrants live a better life in San Diego. It was established in 1986, and its initial focus was on helping farm worker migrants that were living in the canyons of North San Diego County. Since then, their work has expanded to include humanitarian work along the entire US-Mexico border. They provide funding to help cover the cost of rent, utilities, shelter construction projects, and food for shelter residents. Their shelter aid program assists over 900 migrants daily, supporting 16 different migrant shelters in both San Diego and Tijuana. They have been able to fund projects for families such as medical attention, water stations with the help of Refugee Health Alliance, expansion of shelters to provide space for COVID-19 isolation preparedness, and provide washers to ensure proper sanitation of clothes of shelter residents. They also try their best to reunite families, and they provide legal representation to migrant children seeking special immigrant juvenile status. And on every first Saturday of the month, the organization visits 2 sites where day laborers congregate outside, such as Home Depot and Lowe's. They provide them with food, water, clothes, and hygiene products. The program even provides moral and emotional support and provides free immigration and employee rights consultations to those in need. As you can see, they do all this and more for undocumented families, and that's why I appreciate them so much. Thanks to this organization, many families have been helped out, and it is from people who do it out of love and compassion. Once again, the difficulties undocumented families in San Diego go through goes undiscussed most of the time, and I wanted to bring awareness to the bravery of those families. Undocumented families cause no harm and only want a better life for themselves when stepping into this country. They come into this country not knowing the language and the cultural aspects of the American life and still manage to thrive. Continuing on with their new lives, some families, unfortunately, get caught and separated due to immigration policies, and all they are left with is the pain and trauma. Dreams are left behind, but hope and love are still stored, connecting many of these families. Undocumented individuals are one of the strongest people I've ever encountered, and I pay my respects to them. If you're interested, there is a movie named Bajo la misma luna, which translates to Under the Same Moon. It is strongly related to this topic, whereas a single mother only wants a better life for her and her son. It shows the struggles crossing the border and the struggles maintaining a new life here in the US. This film truly brought tears to my eyes, and I highly recommend watching it. Thank you for watching, and as Ellie Weasel, a Holocaust survivor, once said, human beings can be beautiful or more beautiful. They can be fat or skinny. They can be right or wrong, but illegal? How can a human being be illegal?